Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening today. Exciting. Here we are at Live Impact. This is Nick Esayian, CEO of Light Helmets, and this is season 2, episode 9. And I have a very special guest today, world-class orthopedic surgeon specializing in sports medicine with more than 40 years of experience treating elite athletes at the professional, collegiate, and high school levels. Throughout his career, he's worked alongside medical teams supporting organizations such as the San Francisco 49ers, Oakland Raiders, San Francisco Giants, and the San Jose Sharks. He's recognized for staying at the forefront of surgical innovation, including performing the first Mako robotic arm knee replacement in Fremont, California. He's built a highly credible reputation for working with some of the biggest names in sports, such as Barry Sanders, Joe Montana, Michael Jordan, Jerry Rice, all big names. Hopefully they can come on the podcast too. We're excited to have an expert of his caliber, Dr. Arthur Ting. How are you today, Dr. Ting?
Great. Thanks for having me, Nick.
I hope that bio was okay. I'm sure. Did I miss anything critical there other than you being a rock star of physicians?
I don't know about that, but that was, I thought it was very nice. Thank you.
So let's see. We met maybe 6 months ago?
Yes, something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. So we had a mutual friend, Sandy Sandoval, who was a vice president of athlete relations at one point at EA Sports, and he works with us. And he's got a million contacts from his days at EA and being in the sports world, East and Bat prior to that. And I know he has great degree of respect for you. And, we got a chance to sit down and talk a little bit about sports technology and things. And you're in the orthopedic space. We've got a wonderful group of medical advisory docs on our board, and you're the latest and greatest. So today, hopefully, we pull off the curtain and talk a little bit of modern sports and how things have changed over the last 41 years. But to start, I'd like to hear a little bit and share with everyone, where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up? What was your family life like?
Yeah. So I grew up in the Bay Area. I'm the son of two immigrant parents that migrated here to the United States when the communists came into China. My dad was educated as an engineer, but coming into this country because of the language barrier, him and my mom suffered from in the beginning, started as a accountant because it was the easiest transition for him. And he worked his way up to being an executive, got his CPA, and was vice president of Mission Equities insurance company by the time I was in college. So although I came from that initial background, I felt I grew up relatively privileged. So coming from a family like that, though, really instilled the work ethic. And to get to the athletic part of it, athletics wasn't even a known word in our family. So that being said, I had an affinity for it early on. And going back and looking back at all the Pop Warner helmets that you got now brings me back to those days when I tried out for Pop Warner. I got cut. So, but for me, I don't even know how my mom came about registering me for that type of thing, as well as Little League. Going back and looking on this, I said, how did my mom, even though I would have told her because there's no way she would have known. But anyway, that's where the love and the affinity comes about for my want to do something in athletics my entire life. So because I think if you're deprived of it, you want it even more. So that's how it's kind of how I grew up. And then back in those days, like you mentioned, I've been in practice for 40 years. So back then, there were no career days or doing an internship at some. So I don't have a story about why I ended up in orthopedics. Just that, as my education evolved, I went to medical school, graduated from St. Louis University, then came back to the West Coast and did my residency at USC and did my fellowship with Kerlan Jobe Clinic, that's still named that to this day in LA, and started practice in the Bay Area. And I've been doing that ever since. So
Your parents had to be some remarkable people to come over with the language barrier and then jump into a completely different professional field, right? That people usually are committed to right out of college. And then I think it's even more remarkable, and you touched on this, is how did they even know what Little League was or what Pop Warner was? And how did you get the paperwork? And there was no internet back then. And did you go talk to the neighbor? Did you go stop by the field? Like, how did they figure it all out? Right? Pretty innovative.
yeah, to me, that's the most amazing thing. And unless you grew up in an environment like that, you would not understand that. And so my raising my three boys, it was completely different because of that experience that I had. I think I would go home and talk to my mom about it, but somehow, when you're 8, 9, 10 years old and you're involved in Little League, there's no way, looking back on it, I don't know how she followed up on what I would say to her coming home.
Sure.
And they didn't even know what football was. So to sign me up for a Pop Warner, and I was 12 years old at the time, and I made it to the last cuts, but I did not end up making the team. And it was before high school, so I never ventured back into it. I just wasn't big enough.
Sure.
So
It's interesting too. And did you play baseball?
yes, I played Little League baseball and played in junior high, what we called Babe Ruth back then, and did not play in high school. So I ended up running cross country track. I wrestled a bit. Back then they had this lightweight basketball season during the fall. So
Okay.
I played that ninth and 10th grade and ended up running cross country and long distance in college.
Wow. So
Division,
you were an
Division
athlete.
three. Somewhat, yeah, somewhat.
Now, did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I had an older brother who was a distance runner. That's kind of how I ventured into that. And he became an engineer, went to Case Tech, and I got a younger sister.
And at some juncture, you had to have interest in medicine. Was there like a cataclysmic event, or was it a process, or was it just an opportunity that popped up and you said, I'm going to go down this path?
No, it was hard to get in back in my day. You had the people that, wanted to make a lot of money and who were very intelligent back then because, the tech industry wasn't around. So you didn't have that competition. So medical school was tough. I felt like I wanted to do something that I didn't want to regret not doing. And that's kind of why I went into orthopedics, because it was one of the hardest residencies to get. I said, if I can't get into orthopedics, then I'll do something else. But let me try to do orthopedics first. And because they were involved with sports injuries too, the most, that attracted me also. But I kind of fell into it, the whole medical school part. My dad encouraged me naturally, but and I was better in the science and math subjects, so that seemed to correlate better.
Sure, sure. And, then you fast forward, right? You go through how many years of school? So you had your undergrad, graduate degree, you have a residency, the whole thing. Like, what age were you when you started to practice?
Yeah, that's like I was either 28, 29, but I was close to being 30.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, before I ever started, well, you start making money once you start your residency. Okay. But yeah, it's 4 years undergrad, pre-med, then 4 years of medical school. Then there's 1 year internship, 4 years of orthopedic residency, and 1 year fellowship.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's a marathon, like people say, and you can't think about this ends because it never ends. So
That's true. I've had some Navy SEALs that have been on here, and when they go through this BUDS, which is supposedly or is one of the toughest military like crucibles to get through, there just get through the next evolution, just get through that next day, just get to the next meal, just get done with this exercise. And I would guess when you're in something like that, there's things you like, and then there's chapters of it that you probably don't like. I would also imagine that there were windows of time where you got very little sleep and you didn't have the opportunity to engage socially. So, uh, hats off to anyone in that field, but for you to stride through, especially, you know, first generation born here, it's quite an accomplishment. When did sports come across your radar as an area that you wanted to focus on as an orthopedic specialist?
yeah, like I said, it was almost during my childhood years when I think because I was deprived of it, I was always seeking that. So that's why I brought that whole detailed story up about
Sure.
how I was raised and everything. But yeah, so my interest in sports has always been, and I think the opportunity to participate in a healthcare venue where we kind of focus on athletes was the why I picked orthopedics and did a sports medicine fellowship and now devote the entire practice to sports related injuries. So I think it's I can't put a time frame on it, but as I evolved in my education, um, I think I would have gone into coaching if I wasn't a surgeon
You'd have
because
been good at that too, Doc. I'm
I
100% sure.
I don't know about that, but that's where my passion would have been, I think. So
What do you now when you got involved with professional athletics, like you've been in the baseball side, the football side, the hockey side, what was the first team like professional team that you worked with? And when you first broke into that, what was the thing that maybe stood out to you the most or shocked you the most being in a professional locker room or facility?
yeah, that started when my fellowship year. Well, actually, when I was a resident, we rotated because I did my residency at USC. Our fourth year, you rotated through the Curl and Job Clinic.
Mhm.
So they would either send the fellows or the med students to practice. So I was going down to, Anaheim for the Rams practice and covering that and just being around Dr. Job and Dr. Curlin during that time, you kind of were in awe because they were taking care of the highest level of patients,
Sure.
and things were handled differently with those guys. And I noticed that kind of right off the bat, and going to the Dodger games with Dr. Job, uh, being in the locker room. There's certain etiquette and because you're entering somebody else's house. This is what I used to tell our fellows. When you go in the locker room, you're not a guest. You're an outsider visitor.
Yeah.
And so you gotta, you don't speak until you're spoken to. There's a certain amount of these guys are getting ready for a game. You're being the team doctor, you're the least important person until either somebody gets hurt or you got to clear somebody.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're irrelevant. Okay. So when you're there, you've got to act like you're irrelevant. You get out of everybody's way. Okay. That's the first thing you learn, at least
Sure.
go into a pro locker room, like you said. So there's a certain amount of etiquette that you learn by just observing the guys that are above you. And so that gave me the first exposure to that whole environment. And I was kind of in awe of it because I saw, Frank Job taking care of, Fernando. who pitched for the Dodgers back
Sure.
then. You know, I mean,
Fernando Valenzuela, correct?
yeah, of
Yep.
course, yeah. So that was my first kind of taste of it, and it's the highest level of patient, you know, that you could have the responsibility of taking care of. So that impressed me. So that's always been, you know, like a goal of mine. You know, you've got somebody that's extremely valuable that needs to get better, and he's in your hands. You
Sure.
know, so that I've always been grateful for any pro athlete that comes in, you know, that the responsibility increases.
Yeah, I mean it's their living, right? And it's not only their living that year, but what is their future going to look like based on their health and how they migrate through these injuries? And obviously, they want to get back on the ice or on the field as quick as possible, but at what cost long term? And you're instrumental as a physician in being involved in that. I would guess that you built some pretty strong relationships up with these people and these players over time.
Yeah, I think in my at least in my shoes, you got to appreciate the trust, you know, they have in you. Not only do they, when they say, you know, hey, thanks for the care, I really appreciate you, I return it and say, I appreciate your trust, you know, because they literally could go anywhere, have anybody take a look at it, but you know, they do their research, and I have a lot of good relationships with agents that trust me with their clients, you know, so that kind of keeps me involved in at least at the pro level. Now
That's
high school kids have agents though too, you know.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, and when you talk about what's changed, that's what's changed.
yeah, I mean, there's high school kids that are getting commitments for not even seven figure, eight figure deals going into college. And then you have all the marketing components of it and everything else. And there's such a draw to our product right now because players want to stay on the field. I mean, if you're a high schooler and you've got a big deal in college, you don't want to get dinged. If you're in college and you're going to get drafted, you don't want to slip to the second round because you've had, multiple head injuries. And I can only imagine with all of the other injuries, and having played a little bit of football myself, and one of my sons played football, the other one played hockey. You're a voyeur to this, and I think you hit it on the head of being a guest in these locker rooms. It's really an office because these players are there for 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And, even when I go in, I'm a bigger outsider than you. You spent a lot more time in there. When you look at football versus hockey versus baseball, are the injuries unique in each sport? Is there a big overlap, or do you see varied injuries based on the sport?
Oh, 100% there's a difference. Yeah. So like you take football, since we're speaking of that, the lower extremities predominate. Whereas you go to hockey, the upper extremities, because skates, you're not planted, so less ACL injuries, less knee injuries, but more shoulders, upper extremities, you know, straight contusions, things like that. You go to baseball, okay, and you're dealing with shoulder and arm
Yeah,
predominantly, you know, especially with the pitchers. So yeah, there's definitely some specificity to the sport and the corresponding injuries for sure, 100%. And like take baseball, I don't wear helmets. There's there concussions do occur, but they're not as frequent as football.
sure.
So we're not looking at helmets in baseball. Well, batting helmets, but no.
Nothing else, right?
Right, right.
At least for now. So, as a younger fan of football, we watch these injuries that roll through. It'll be turf toe and then it goes away, and then it's a hip pointer and it goes away, and then it's plantar fasciitis, and it's the next thing. Why do these things seem to fade, and then the next thing comes up? And then the second part of that question is, right now in football, what are the injuries that you see most frequently?
Yeah, the most significant injuries that bring them to our office, besides the ones like the turf toe and things like that, that get really bad where they have to come in. But normally, if it's just a minor turf toe, there's a spectrum of all injuries. So, we don't even see plantar fasciitis. A lot of times it's taken care of by the trainer. Um, so the significant injuries are the obviously the ligament and meniscal injuries of the knee,
Sure.
the tendon ruptures like the Achilles, the things that warrant surgical intervention are probably the most significant that you're seeing more and more of, I think. Uh, I think that the speed, the intensity of the practices, even if they have monitoring devices, um, seem to predominate. I mean, just the nature of the athletes, they keep getting bigger, stronger, faster, right? So
Yeah,
that's where the helmet thing comes in even more importantly, you know?
when you look at, and I'm going to jump to helmets in a second, but like the turf of today versus the turf of 35 years ago, does it bring on a different onset of injuries? Because I remember, I played in the late 80s. The turf that we played on was like a welcome mat on concrete. And man, if you managed to get hit and you couldn't brace yourself and your head slammed in, I mean, you were going to get a concussion. Although as long as you could fog a mirror, they put you back on the field. With the modern turf, do you see different injuries than what you saw 40 years ago?
Yeah, so let's talk about the primary difference between the turf back in the 80s, say, or the early on. It was more like a cement foundation with a rug on top of it.
Right.
Okay, so there was very little give, and the traction was very, very good because it was a rug. Whereas that's where you saw more injuries. I mean, it's totally scientifically proven that there was more injuries on those early turfs than anything.
Sure.
And then because you could plant your foot and get more traction. Just like I said in hockey, because they're on skates and your foot gets uplifted,
Yeah.
you don't run the risk of hyperextending your knee. Okay, that's the bottom line. Once you hyperextend your knee, then you meniscus, ACL, ligament damage. Okay, those are the devastating things. Whereas the modern turf tries to approach what natural grass gives you. In other words, it looks like grass. There's blades.
Sure.
There's those ground up, rubber things that are in the for cushioning
The
and
pellets.
yeah, the pellets that give. See, they give. You don't get the traction, okay, but you get the consistency. That's the difference between natural grass and the grass turf, is that there's more consistent surface. It can get rained on and it stays the same, whereas natural grass gets soggy, it gets wet, you have divots, you have unevenness. So what the grass turf gives us is a more consistent surface, but it's certainly way beyond what the old turf used to be. So there's probably less injuries with natural grass because it's more forgiving. Okay, it gives just
Sure.
like ice would. The closer you get to something that gives out completely, the safer you are for lower extremity injuries. That's where I would attribute the spectrum of the surfaces contributing to the various injuries.
And if you were a NFL owner, would you prefer your players to play on grass or the modern turf?
Grass for sure. Just like they do down at the Rams, they bring it in.
Sure.
The Raiders bring their grass in. They feed it all day, they groom it. So it's more consistent than say a high school grass field, but it's safer than the grass turf because it gives more.
Gives more.
Yeah.
So jumping now to helmets, and this is a conversation you and I agreed on, and it's remarkable. I mean, we still will have people come to us in spite of, Noxie now for the 14 and under players. The helmets next year will all have to be under 3.5 pounds. But I'll even have physicians that are involved in some of the testing with the highest level of play that they just don't think that helmet weight uh, can be attributed to any sort of injury. What do you have to say related to that? And what kind of injuries, if any, can be attached or associated with helmet weight? You know, our helmets right now, we've got helmets that are about 2.7 pounds up to 3.5 pounds. Competitive helmets can weigh as much as 6 pounds. And doing the math as a race car guy, in a 100G impact, that extra 3 pounds is 300 pounds of force snapped on your cervical structure. But hey, I'm not a doctor, so I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Okay, let's start by just talking about like you brought up the weight. Say the weight of the helmet is 5 pounds, like you bring up. That's on the very high end. But they used to, back when I tried out for Pop Warner, those things must have weighed about 6 or 7 pounds.
Sure.
Okay. A kid's head weight is between it's somewhere between, I would say, 7 and 9, because adult head is 10 pounds.
Okay.
Okay. So you put even a 5 pound helmet on a kid whose head only weighs 7 pounds, you've almost doubled the weight of what's on the head.
Sure. What the neck support
Okay.
is.
Yeah. So what's that do? Initially, what's that does, think of the torque on the cervical spine or on the neck. Okay. Torque equals force times moment arm, which is the distance from the axis of rotation. So the base of your neck.
It's like a longer teeter-totter.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So think of the torque that you've increased it. You're a 12-year-old kid. Now you've got twice the weight on your head, stressing just your neck. Okay. Let alone, we'll talk about what it does to the brain and the skull, but it puts the spine at very, very high risk in terms of spinal injury.
Sure.
Okay. So that in itself, so 1 pound makes a difference at that, because like I said, the adult head average is 10 pounds. Okay. So two less than a pound makes a huge difference in terms of torque.
Sure.
And the amount of force, rotational force. And I know you've talked about this before in the past with your experts. It eliminates the biggest problem with helmet wear or any type of headgear. You want to lessen that to almost zero.
Sure.
If you can. You can't get the protection with zero, but my point is, the lighter the better. Okay. Especially if you can replicate the protection, which light has done, So nobody in their right mind that knows anything about physics or kinematics in terms of head movement, spine, would tell you anything different. That's a given, especially at the youth level.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, underdeveloped necks and
yes, 100%.
Does fatigue factor in? Let's say let's focus on younger players. Let's say 14 and under, and then we can talk about the big guys because they're bigger and they're moving faster, so the forces are greater as well. But on the younger kids, does fatigue play into injury because you got a heavier helmet on?
100%, for the exact same reason. If your head's flopping around or it gets tired, you can't protect it.
Sure.
Okay. So, yeah, it's amazing how anybody would even argue the weight thing not being significant. That's insane to me. But yeah, so the emphasis on weight in the helmet is one of the top criteria. I think that made everything safer.
Sure. Yeah. It was a lot of this. SG Helmets was the company that we bought the assets from, and Bill Simpson was big in the auto race space. And in 2000, I think it was 2001, Dale Earnhardt was killed in the Daytona 500, and it wasn't a huge accident, but he wasn't wearing a Hans device. They weren't widely accepted, and like in a lot of spaces, people said, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to turn my head. It's going to limit my vision. I'm not going to be able to get out of the car if it's on fire, etc." And then after he was killed, people migrated to that technology. when you crash in a race car and your body's restrained and you're wearing a 6-pound helmet at 170 miles an hour, your head continues and your body is strapped in. What are the forces that happen on that spinal structure? And in football, some of the impacts are as big, if not bigger, up to 100 Gs. Now it's a little bit different, but what kind of forces are experienced? And is it a neck? Is it a shoulder? Is it your back? Is it your brain stem? Just talk us through that a little.
Okay, so you're talking about the way you get injured at going at that speed is deceleration. Okay, you come to a sudden stop. So your head, everything that's not strapped down, is still moving at that speed.
Sure.
And if you crash, that abruptly stops, but the energy in your head keeps going. The most dramatic thing is you get decapitated.
Sure.
Your head keeps going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that kind of force, it would take probably greater for that to actually physically decapitate you, but you can feel the momentum of the what happens to the brain against the skull. All the soft, anything movable is going to get jarred.
Sure.
Okay.
And it slams back too into
it slams back 100%. Yes. So those are the things that the deceleration can mess up your brain, your eyes, anything visceral, whereas your body's strapped in, so it's not going to go.
Sure.
It's the purpose of those straps.
So
keep your body from flying forward.
The biomechanics, though, if I'm a wide receiver and I'm going to catch the ball and somebody hits me in the chest and my head snaps forward in that 50 G impact, it's basically doing the same thing. It just may be at a lower level, but it's happening with more frequency.
Yep. Same mechanism of injury. Once you add horsepower, it's a completely different game. That's why those guys completely have different injuries. Like I see motocross guys all the time, and I saw a recent racer that had an upper brachial plexus injury just from deceleration, just going through the whoop section and even coming off a jump. The amount of deceleration that occurs is enough to stretch his nerve.
Wow.
Which is what he has. He has a stinger. In football terms, he has a stinger, but in motocross, the medical name for this is upper brachial trunkus palsy.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say that. So we see those injuries just with normal forces, and in football, it's just the depression of the shoulder and stretching of the neck that causes a stinger.
Sure.
Okay.
In football, one of the injuries that we've seen that's very common, because the game's changed, right? They're trying to avoid the head-to-head contact that they used to. That was common, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and before that, where you can't target someone. In college, you actually get tossed out of the game, et cetera, et cetera. One of the injuries that they've not been able to eliminate or even reduce are these head whip to the ground, or these secondary impacts where a quarterback may slide and he gets hit and his head slams back. Talk a little bit about how weight potentially contributes to that impact or the likelihood of injury.
Same thing. You increase the weight of the object that's at the end of the moment arm, which is your head, more force.
Sure.
Mass times acceleration, right? So same thing like the stinger. When your head gets torqued or whiplashed outward, the heavier the head, the greater the force. See, so it's relevant in terms of preventing even a stinger.
Sure.
In terms of helmet weight. I mean, it's so important that goes back to what I said earlier. For somebody to dismiss it is amazing,
We hear it all the time. I'm just shocked, right? I've had doctors that are highly accredited, involved in these high-level testings that have told me in a Zoom call, I've never seen an NFL player lose control of their head due to weight. We're not talking about a diving bell that's 200 pounds where someone can't hold it up. But once you lose control of it, meaning the impact or the speed is so severe or the angle of attack, facilitates that, there's just more force when you have more weight in an uncontrolled object. But I don't know if it's because people look at it just from the medical perspective. They're not looking at it from the engineering perspective with levers and lengths of levers and where a fulcrum is and all that. But it's challenging because we only now are starting to see our competitors. And in fact, one of our competitors has started to introduce helmets that are a little bit lighter. The CEO will come right out in, we had an Inc. magazine article written about us. And that individual said, "Oh, we've never seen a study that shows that the reduction in weight can limit the frequency or likelihood of concussion." I'm just shocked that somebody would come out and say that.
Yeah, that's an inaccurate statement. I just think because it's been overlooked for so long, and now you're bringing it up, or not just now, but since light's been around, it's been part of their major technological advances. I think you've brought it to surface, but anybody who understands just normal, like I said, physics and understands the injuries that are associated with this, clearly sees it as, it's almost one of those things. Why didn't I think of it? Honestly, that's what I say about tech stuff, even with, DoorDash.
Sure.
Something as it's one, to me, Nick, it is one of those things, because when Sandy first told me about it, and then I did my research, I said, "Hey, Sandy, how do I get involved with this, man? This is awesome." That's what kind of stimulated me, because I got the gist of what you guys were doing, and not only the weight, but everything else, the contact, the padding that's specialized for the position space, everything about what the things that you have highlighted, and the things that differentiate light are things that I feel like are obvious, but nobody's addressed them. That's probably why they're trying to dismiss it. You can't, though. You absolutely cannot. The people that know, and I think it's inevitable, and you're driving the industry towards that, which is that's a good sign.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah.
There's been no competition in football helmets for so long. It's been Riddell, and then you have Schutt that owns or purchased Visus out of bankruptcy. Riddell purchased Zenith out of bankruptcy, but you can go through the list, whether it's Bike, Adams, Rawlings, Wilson, Zenith, Visus. Why has no one been able to thrive? I mean, this is America's sport, and there's a refurbishment component that once you start to sell these things, there's a nice cash flow model. But because there's only two competitors and one has 80% market share, it's really been challenging. And the NFL has a couple of contracts with Riddell. They have one for collectibles, and then they have another marketing contract that we don't have all the details of. But in the commercials during the NFL games for the better part of this season, even though you can't put the Riddell logo on the helmet, the Riddell logo was on the helmet in the commercial, and then it switched to one of the team logos, and the player grabbed it. And we had people talking to us like, "How are you ever going to compete when there's a Riddell commercial in the television ad?" We said, "It's not a Riddell commercial. It's an NFL commercial." So those are the forces, the headwinds for us. Now, the tailwinds are parents realize that weight's the enemy. Physicians, most of them realize that weight's the enemy. The NOXA, which is the organization that approves all these helmets, at least at the cursory level for youth, high school, college play, the NFL helmets to check that box. But even if you just take out the protective component of this and look right at performance, there's not a single guy that showed up at the combine and said, "I'm going to wear a 3-pound baseball hat today and run faster or jump higher," right? So why would you add that superfluous weight?
No, yeah.
The question for you on younger players, because there's a lot of moms and dads that are, "Oh, I'm so worried about my son or daughter playing tackle football." And we've seen flag football grow, and it's wonderful because there's a lot of kids that may not be able to play tackle football. And it also allows kids to play without the expensive equipment. In tackle football, what would you tell a mom or a dad or a guardian if their son or daughter were going to play? What kind of preparation to reduce the chance or likelihood of some sort of injury. And that can be a head injury or lower extremity injury. I'd love to just hear your opinions. And I know a lot of parents would love to hear it.
Okay, so all three of my sons played Pop Warner football back when I like to say it was Pop Warner football. Okay, Oklahoma, bull in the ring, all those drills were
Brutal.
wide open back then.
Yep.
Okay, so parents would come up to me and say, how do you allow your kid to play tackle football at 8 or 9 years old? And I said, well, look at what they do. They try to keep kids in the same weight class. Back in those days, they weighed you every week before the game. You had to make weight if you were a certain age, right? So the dynamics of the energy was pretty equal to me. In other words, the kid that I'm going to play against has the same amount of forces and energy that's created on contact that I do.
Sure.
So it offsets it a little bit, I mean, so it was equal to me. And then I looked at naturally they were all equipped. So I thought it was relatively safe is what my bottom line was. But how do you go from that situation to being safer? Now I've got a kid on the team saying, hey, what's the best helmet? Okay, back in those days, there was a bike helmet.
Sure.
Okay, so there wasn't any choice. Okay, so you had to play with what you were dealt almost. We didn't have the choice. Now you've got choices. So today, at this day and age, my advice, get the lightest helmet you can get for the same reasons I've already stated.
Sure.
On a kid whose neck is underdeveloped, whose head weight is 2 pounds less than an adult. Okay. So a half a pound in a helmet, and there's some helmets that are a pound heavier. Okay. That are available at the youth level. Makes a huge difference.
Sure.
In terms of torque. So head protection, as well as stress on the neck, the other injuries that are associated with the momentum, the second impact injuries, as you brought up, all makes a huge difference with the amount of weight. Okay. Then with the protection added, it only makes it safer.
Sure.
Okay. Your liners, your padding inside, the components of the shell, which give you the same protection as the heavier helmets. Okay. So I don't see where it should dominate the market once the information gets out there, once reputable people start talking about it. But one of the things is there hasn't been a change in so long. Nobody understands that. It hasn't been addressed is what's happened. That's one thing I'll give you credit for, because you've continued to make things lighter and better to this day. I mean, Light's come out with a new model, right? I mean, so you guys are constantly working at it.
We're after it. I mean, right now, so there's the NFL, they have their testing, and in 2025 we had the #1 new helmets for the 3 position specific areas: quarterback, O-line, D-line. And they've got some new test results coming out this year. And their testing is designed to keep the player safe. The NFL wants to keep the player safe as well. Now, does the date ever come out of how those helmets really performed on field? No. But I can tell you that our 40, 50 players in the NFL and 200 in NCAA, we didn't have a player lose a game or miss a game due to head injury. Now you jump to the other levels of play, college, high school, youth. Virginia Tech has this independent lab that rates all these helmets, and the Light Apache's #1 in youth and varsity.
Yep.
And then there are lower price helmets that we offer that are still at the tip of the spear, but they cost less because every young player deserves that top tier protection. How does helmet fitment come into play in terms of, you can have the best helmet, in my opinion, is if it doesn't fit properly, it's compromised. What's your take on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. You lose the protection. the exact technologies that everybody touts about, if it doesn't fit normally, you lose the whole principle of the technology that it was meant for. So, you change it, the helmet rotates or is loose, comes up. So you lose those contact points, exactly what you use when you fit the helmet.
Sure.
So because you have the pads that allow you the adjustments, yeah, that's why I think it's a no-brainer that Light's the safest helmet out there, especially for at the youth level.
You should
You
be on
know,
the medical advisory board after that
I
statement.
should. I should actually, yeah.
Question for you, and this is a complete change in topic. Out of all of the famous players and athletes that you worked with, who are your two or three favorites and why?
Oh, that's a hard question. Who are my favorites or who am I don't really have a favorite. I can't answer that, Nick.
Okay, that's fair.
I've got guys who I've actually treated and operated on. I've got Joe Montana, Tiger Woods, Yao Ming, Barry Bonds. Yeah, I got a good roster. I mean, Andrew's got a better roster. There's Alatrosh, all those guys are, they've got uh, a list way better than I do. But that to me, that for me, that's probably. And then I have the racers. I have Kenny Roberts, Wayne Rainey, Mick Doohan,
The
the
superbike
top.
guys.
Yeah, most road racer guys. That's what I enjoyed most because in the U.S. that sport's not well known, but worldwide, those guys are known like the other guys I just named. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's given me a change of a pace and a whole different uh, perspective on the racing.
Sure. Those guys are rock stars. The GP bikes. I mean, people have now really, taken on Formula One again in the United States because the reality show facilitated families to watch. And now it's like, oh, I can go and the 20 best drivers in the world. Like I raced sports cars professionally for 27 years. And hey, was I in the series where the tip of the spear existed? Did I win races? Absolutely. That's a whole different level. Those are not normal people driving normal cars. I mean, their entire life, all the hours of their day are focused on that. But when you strap it on a motorcycle, the cost of failure is even greater. And Kenny Roberts in the 70s and 80s and Rainey and Randy Mamola and all of these other guys that
Yeah.
you and I have talked about. And then motocross also, right? We went from Evel Knievel jumping whatever 150 feet. These kids are doing it 200 times in a weekend every time they go over a triple. And
100%. Yep.
if when you look at your body of work over the last 40 years in football, hockey, motocross, superbike, baseball, all of these different things, and you look at a parent now, and your kids played sports, obviously. As a parent, do you think it's better for kids to play a single sport where it, dominates their year, or that they're a multi-sport athlete, and why?
Okay. Yeah. My personal opinion, and I know it'll get disputed, is I always encourage multi-sports. All three of my kids played three sports through high school, and naturally, they all played collegiate football at the end, but that was the best way for them to get to college and to participate in athletics. But all three, I mean, they participated in four sports because uh, first 2 years my twins ran. First 3 years they ran track and played baseball.
Wow.
So, and my oldest son did a little bit of that, but he didn't have the speed the two younger ones had, but he would run track in addition to playing baseball, to a senior year. Then he was playing football and basketball only. But I encourage multiple sports. It I think it takes pressure. It causes them to enter a different environment.
Sure.
And when you're a kid, I think adversity is the best thing for you. That's
I
what
agree.
that's how you learn. I
Even
mean,
as an adult.
yeah, 100%. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Adversities when we learn everything, you
Yeah,
know?
even I think from a biomechanical perspective, like the repeat motion, if somebody's just playing baseball and not something else, like you give a likelihood to have certain types of injuries that you wouldn't if you were playing three sports, I would surmise.
Yeah, and what you want to encourage at that early age is just fitness
Sure.
and learning how to socially get along with everybody, how to experience different coaches, how to get a bad coach, and you got to live with it, just like you'll have a bad teacher or something, So I always encouraged multiple sports as much as you could get involved. I think it's excellent. And there's people that write about all the best athletes always played multiple sports.
Yeah.
This year round stuff is I'm kind of against it, but I realize if some of these basketball players and stuff that are already where they're going to play in the NBA, maybe that, but still, even LeBron played football in high school a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that, I mean, we've had a lot of NFL players in here, and they've all said exactly what you said, almost verbatim, that the three sport athlete, it further develops them in all sports. If you're playing baseball or basketball, it helps your football game. It also develops different parts of the body. And the way you react to things, the way you see things, all the angles and things like that are something that benefits you as an athlete. Now, I think when you get into college, especially with all the money in it now, if you're a tight end at USC, you're probably just playing football and not running track and playing baseball or whatever. But things have changed with dumping money into college. So you've had this storied career. You've been a dad. Your kids play college football, which I had completely forgot about. When you look back, and this is the same last question I ask everyone, what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh God, what do I want to be remembered for?
That's
I
right.
think that I provided guidance and help. I mean, that's primarily why you go into medicine is to help people. You're always helping. You're always at least trying to help.
Sure.
You know, and get people ready. That's the difference between. I always tell people that's the difference between being a doctor and a lawyer. A lawyer always trying to destroy somebody. So being a doctor, I think you're always in the arena of trying to help people, and I get the most satisfaction out of that. Yeah.
Well, I think your body of work stands above many, and looking at all the people that you've affected, and not only their ability to play, but their quality of life after. And even our interaction when we talked about old sports injury of mine, or you being concerned about my health and wellness, this isn't a switch for you, or it's not a job for you. It's not something that toggles on and off, that you live that way. And, we're all blessed to have people like you in our lives and involved with us. And I know the athletes that have been around you, and anyone that I've talked to that knows you feels the same way, that you've done exactly what you said. You help people, you enrich them, you give them a better quality of life. And when one person can have that type of wide impact, you're living well. So I appreciate all you've done, and I thank you for taking the time with us today. And we can look for you online, helping us here at Light, and we need people that are smarter than me out there waving the banner and talking about the technology and the lighter weight.
No, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you. Like I've always told you, Nick. Thanks for letting me get involved in life.
You bet, Doc. Thanks so much. Thanks for spending time with us today. Have a great day.
Thanks.